Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, January 29th, 2021. It is just not worth the cost. Now, to those of us who don't live in the D.C. area and profit from the income tax system, it's really hard to find much to like about the federal income tax. People correctly complain that it takes your money before you see it, making feeding the government a higher priority than feeding your family. It is extremely complicated to the point that most people have to pay someone else to do their taxes for them. It requires that taxpayers keep detailed records. It is absolutely impossible to find even one person who has read the whole law or who even claims to fully understand it. It's modified by men and women who have no idea what the language they're voting for actually means. It is changed pursuant to computer models that try to predict the impact of tax policy changes while ignoring the fact that people actually do try to do what's best for themselves and their families and not necessarily what the bureaucrats want them to do. It's easily gamed if you're part of a group that can pay for special treatment. It's ridiculously easy to evade, and that evasion costs the government hundreds of billions of dollars every year. It can be difficult to get some of your own money back, even if you're entitled to it, and refunds are only given once a year. Congress is constantly changing it, and many of those changes are bought by lobbyists so that they benefit one group while adversely affecting other groups. Now, because it's constantly changing, it's impossible to do any sound, long-range planning because you have no certainty on how much of your money you can keep in the following year. It's harmful to the overall economy. It makes it more difficult for American manufacturers to compete in the global marketplace with their foreign competitors. So, with all of these problems, you may ask, how in the world could such a terrible system last for over 100 years? Well, the answer, of course, is that it's hugely profitable for the D.C. elites and their minions in Congress. They don't care what it does to the rest of us as long as they can get rich from it. Now, of course, they do throw a few bones out every now and then to make certain people feel like they're getting a break that others aren't. Among those kinds of benefits are tax credits for the installation of solar systems equal to 26% of the cost, the earned income credit, a $2,500 deduction for student loan interest, a $2,500 tax credit for undergraduate education expenses, a $2,000 tax credit per dependent child under age 16, IRA contribution deductions, continuing education deductions, and for the approximately 13% of us who itemize deductions, there's home mortgage interest deductions, charitable deductions, deductions for state and local income, sales, and personal property taxes up to $10,000, and deductions for gambling losses. Now, it's important to remember that a tax credit and a tax deduction are distinctly different. A tax credit reduces the taxes you owe. If your total tax liability is $15,000, but you qualify for a $10,000 tax credit, your tax bill is reduced by the full $10,000 to just $5,000. On the other hand, a tax deduction merely reduces the amount of income that is subject to taxation. For example, if you're in the 20% income tax bracket, a $10,000 tax deduction will save you just $2,000 in federal income taxes. And don't forget that these credits and deductions won't save you a dime of federal payroll tax. Those taxes are strictly a percentage of your earnings with no credits or deductions allowed. And finally, don't get too used to having a particular credit or deduction available to you. As noted earlier, Congress is constantly tinkering with the tax code, and the credits and deductions you count on for this year can easily be reduced or even taken away entirely next year. In conclusion, if it costs you your piece, it's too expensive. Now, all of the above credits and deductions were created by Congress to placate us and to keep us from really seeing just how corrupt the income payroll tax system is. The politicians know that if we, the people, ever saw what was really going on with the tax system, we would demand change. So the DC elites keep us in line by threatening to take away the breaks that they so graciously granted us. Now, the income tax system is based on the arrogant principle that we're just not smart enough to know what's good for us. So we just need to trust our betters in DC to do what's really in our best interests. Like trained dogs, if we behave as they say, they give us a treat. They let us keep more of our income so that we can then use it for our families. Now, should we be like sheep who are herded this way and that way by our betters in DC? Should we allow them to keep taking our money before we get it and then making us fight to get some of it back? Now, the question is really simple. Who should decide how much tax I pay? Now, for example, why should only people who itemize deductions be allowed to deduct charitable donations to their church or to the Red Cross, while the other 87% of us who don't itemize have to donate money on which we've already paid income and payroll taxes? So instead of giving 100% dollars, like the privileged 13% do, we have to give between 70% and 85% dollars, depending on how much of our money the government has confiscated from us. Now, with a fair tax, we get all of our money. There is no gross and net. You bring home everything you earn without any federal withholding or federal payroll taxes. We can then use 100% of our money in the way that we believe is best. We can donate to a charity and not pay any fair tax. We can purchase used goods and not pay any fair tax. And unless we have a business, we don't have to keep any tax records at all or file any tax returns. We simply pay our federal taxes at the cash register when we purchase new goods and retail services. The present income payroll tax system costs us our peace of mind, and that's too expensive. So, if you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to FAIRtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under How It Works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.